Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm your host, Anna Christensen, and you're joining us for Accelerate Your Hiring, where we will offer solutions to those hiring cycles that can drain your time, money, and morale. If you have questions during the session, drop them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. Today we have an incredible speaker with you, Suman Cherry, CEO of Cherry Talent Group, who has 25 years of experience in the recruitment space. She's going to walk us all through how to tighten up our recruiting processes without sacrificing quality. Suman, take it away.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much for joining us today. Like Anna mentioned, what we want to be focusing on for this webinar is how do we find that perfect match without giving up quality and without it taking so much time to do it, right? It's about shortening that process. So what we're going to be focusing on for the next 20 or 30 minutes is setting a time frame, identifying those key players, prioritizing the right fit, streamlining the interview process, and onboarding for long-term success. So let's just start with setting the time frame. So when we are working with clients, typically we aim for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, when you're looking at a time frame, you're going to want to look at it from the time of, okay, we need to hire this person to the time of this person has signed the contract, right? So if you're aiming for 4 to 6 weeks, that feels like a good amount of time. Why is it so important to set up a time frame for our hiring? A clear hiring timeline keeps things on track and prevents unnecessary delays. And I think we can all understand, we've all been probably recruiting and hiring for a long time, that when we don't have a process, it delays everything, drags it out, and this risks us losing top candidates to other opportunities. We've seen this a lot of times with candidates as well. How do we do this? So creating accountability to time is going to be about communication more than anything else. Having an evaluation process. When we're working with clients, we really try to look at the searches on a weekly basis to understand if we need to make any shifts to the search, and having some key metrics of what we're wanting to aim for in that search. How many candidates do we want to interview? How many people do we want to source? What does that look like? So then when we're talking about this, when we're doing this check-ins, we're able to understand if we need to make shifts before things slow down. Do we need to align the salary in a different way? The amount of years of experience, whatever that might be. And this will keep the team aligned and the candidates engaged in the process. And what happens when we don't? So dragging out the process can cost money and lower team morale. Obviously, it costs money in the sense of we're not hiring those people to create that solution that we need. And also on the flip side of that is we talk to so many candidates who really their motivation to look is because their companies aren't hiring people and they're having to do the jobs of 2 or 3 people, and it's leaving them disengaged, and they're not wanting to be part of that organization anymore. So when you don't hire people in a timely manner, then what ends up happening is other people are taking those responsibilities on and you might lose them. Identifying those key players. So when we are looking at key players, we're talking about who needs to be involved in this process. Yes, we obviously want to involve managers or people who are directly interviewing or working with these candidates, but we also want to talk to the candidates to talk to people who are working with on a day-to-day basis. Let's say you are looking for a project manager and you have an estimator who's been there for a really long time, is really keyed in the core values, really represents that, and is going to be working with this person. You definitely want that person to be interviewing with those candidates as well. The important piece about identifying those key players is that it helps to everyone to know what their responsibility is going to be in the hiring process. So when you're setting these key players, you also want to look at putting together a schedule, who's going to be responsible for what. So that way you're aligning the goals and expectations, and that way this is going to limit delay. Everyone knows what they're responsible for. And this way, when you're having conversations about candidates, it's great because you can collaborate, talk about what's working, what's not working. And this way, it also helps to make sure the candidates feel good about your organization. It's, it's really important as an organization to have this together. Companies that excel at hiring, they are able to grow their businesses quicker and able to grow them in a healthy way with the right people. So when you have this down really well, this is a key competitive advantage that you have as an organization, because it makes you look really good for a candidate. They feel comfortable with you. They understand what the process is going to look like. So identifying those key players are going to be huge. And what happens when we don't? Early on, it can get messy. People don't know who is responsible for what. And instead of a process around hiring can feel more like herding cats. A lot of times that's what it really does feel like. There's misalignments, there's delayed, we miss on opportunities, communication gets lost. And ultimately, it does not look good for your brand. It does not look good when the process is not clean and the process is not clean. It reflects on these top tier candidates might thinking, do they have their stuff together? Are they a good organization if they can't even get this right? So something to think about. Prioritizing the right fit. I'm just going to kind of go over this pretty quickly as far as like defining the right person. If you want to have some more detail about this piece, the last webinar I did was really talking a lot more about this and kind of going into more detail. But when we're talking about prioritizing the right fit, this is going to be back to setting that time frame, all those pieces, the key players. We need to understand what we really need, right? We've got this problem, we want to grow, or we need a solution. So what are the essential qualifications of the role? The essential pieces, and really trying to avoid and getting distracted by the preferred pieces and letting everyone in the team know what those essential pieces are. That is absolutely important. And the other piece of it is that, in order to have long-term success with a candidate, they need to have more than just skill set. They need to be able to be a cultural fit from a long-term perspective. So making sure that you as an organization are having those conversations on what your core values are, who has worked at your organizations before, who hasn't worked in your organization, what types of key attributes does this person need to know? And this again is going to come back to communication. This is going to come back to having those deeper conversations and everyone on the same team having that consistency. Keeping hiring bias in check. Look, it is so easy a lot of times when we interview candidates for a position that we like them. Oh my gosh, I like them. They remind us of us. Maybe they remind us of someone we know. But we need to look at what the role is, and we need to not base it on us liking someone. We need to have a structure in place that allows us to score people. So they take the biasness out of this. And I highly recommend everyone at the organization who's interviewing people have a scoring system. This way you're making less objective choices versus it being on, oh, I like their personality. It's like, but how did they answer the questions? How did they ask those questions about accountability, responsibility, whatever those might be? So making sure that you're keeping that biasness also when you're finding the right person, because that person might be different than anyone else you've had in your organization. And that's part of growing, is that you need different, right? You want to grow. You don't want everyone to be the same, because how do you grow from that? Risks and pitfalls of not hiring the wrong fit. I think this is pretty understood. I'm sure we've all done it. I've done it. I'm sure you guys have done it as well. When we don't hire the right people, when we hire too quickly and we don't qualify, or we drag it out in the last minute we decide to hire, we leads to frustration, increases turnover within the team, and waste time and money in the long run. I heard a statistic one time, whenever if you go through the process of recruiting and hiring and training and all the things, what does that look like from a cost perspective? In a lot of cases, it can exceed $100,000 plus of the time and energy we've spent. So taking the time to understand what you need is going to be so important. This interview process. This is something I'm really proud about that we do really well at CTG, that our clients really rely on us about, is we take interviewing from a whole health perspective. Yes, we want to make sure they have the essentials of the role. We want to make sure we're asking questions about the types of projects they've worked on, but we also want to be asking them behavioral based questions. We need to understand how they fit as far as problem solving skills and how they're going to fit as an organization. This is also looking at technical assessments, if those need to be done to validate the requirements for the role. And the last piece of this, which I think is just equally as important, is making sure that we keep our candidates informed on what's going on, right? We want to, if they interview with us, we don't want to ghost people. We want to keep them informed, not keep people like dragging out for months, because we hear that all the time. And what we want to do is, if we have the right system in place, we've created the right process in place, and we have like deadlines on how quickly we need to make decisions. Like when we're working with candidates, our clients, we give our clients like a week for feedback because we don't want to keep people like in limbo because they're looking for other jobs, other opportunities. So it's just the kind thing to do. And what happens when we don't have a solid interview process? You know, they can feel very rushed, the interviews. They can, or worse, they can drawn out. We could have someone interview 5, 6, 10 times, and we still don't know if we want to hire them. Biasness creeps in. The candidates take other jobs. And then we lose the candidates that we've been working on, which don't hold up for our long-term goals of hiring this person. The flip side of this also is what also happens, and I think this is a really important piece, is that there's never going to be 100% with a candidate. You could interview them 100 times and they still, in the end, you could do all the things right and they still might not be the right candidate. So delaying this process is the hardest thing. That last piece of making the decision, you need to give yourself some type of deadline so that way you can move on from it and start with other things you have going on in your business, not just hiring. And the last piece, which I think is just as crucial, is the onboarding for long-term success. So many of our clients ask us, like, what do we do to make sure that we can keep these people? How do we found this great person, we want to keep them. What I would say for long-term onboarding is you need to make sure that you have a smooth transition. I like to think of it like this. This is how I explain it. Like if you are bringing a new person into your organization, they do not know you. They have met you a few times during interviews. They might have heard about you. They've done some research on you, but they don't know you. And everyone else in your organization knows each other. So it's like they're stepping into a new school, a new city, a new state, whatever you might want to say. And so your role as an organization, especially that first month, is to make sure they feel seen and heard and they understand what the mission and goals of the organization are. And to set really clear expectation to reduce confusion so they know what they're responsible for. Defining metrics so they can actually know what those success metrics are and talking about them because success looks different for everyone, right? And why is this so important? Strong onboarding increases your new hire retention, your job satisfaction, and honestly, it also contributes so much to them being motivated and excited about taking on, their role. And it leads to engagement because when we onboard correctly, you build that trust, you build that credibility with them. It's crucial to keeping people satisfied and engaged with your organization. And what happens when we don't? So, and I'm going to be honest, this has happened before. We've placed candidates before with clients and the onboarding, they didn't have an onboarding schedule. And these candidates, they left. And a lot of that is because of the lack of disengagement. They're thrown in there. There's a lack of clarity. There's early turnover. This causes the new hires to struggle in their roles. And it really for the clients, it misses out the opportunities for there to be long-term success had they put that time and energy into it in those first few months that are so crucial. So I cannot emphasize as much as onboarding is so just as important as your recruiting process. And with that being said, we're super excited to announce that not only are we going to be doing recruiting consulting, we are stepping into onboarding consulting and also organizational development consulting. We have had lots of clients come to us and ask us if we can help with this. And really, we can. We've got you covered. If you have a plan right now and you just want some tweaks in it, we can come in and overhaul that. If you don't have an onboarding plan and you're like, I don't know what to do, I want to make sure I can keep these people, we can help you with that as well. Organizational development side, if you're like, hey, I have these core values, but I don't know if my whole people know my core values, and I'm not sure if I'm really aligned with my mission. Well, we can come in there and we can help you create that environment that's going to be healthy, engaging from day one, so that when people step into your organization, they're going to want to stay. So very exciting. And all right.
All right. Thank you, Suman, for all of the great advice. I know I'm super excited about the onboarding and organizational development part as well. It's going to be a great service to our clients in addition to the recruiting. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into some questions. I've seen a couple come in, but let me check the chat. So again, if you have not sent your questions in, feel free to do that now. Okay, so my first one here, does the type of position you're recruiting for change the process?
So I would say no, because even let's say you have a position that's highly competitive, that they're not going to have as many people candidates are going to be applying for. So you're going to have to be looking for them. So that's going to take up a lot of time, right? But let's say you have a position that isn't as competitive, but you're just going to get a lot of resumes. You're still going to have to source through all of those and go through the conversations and go through the process. So I would say the only thing that would change your timing as far as hiring is going to be dependent on the urgency of the hire, right? Obviously, if you need to hire someone within 2 weeks, your activity, everything's going to have to increase significantly. And a lot of times when we're working with clients, that is the case sometimes. We have clients that they need something now, and that's why they do engage us for that reason. So we can expedite the process, so to speak.
And then what's the first step in creating an onboarding process?
I think the first step to creating an onboarding process is that first week. I think your first week is really the most important week with that new candidate. And I think, or new employee, I think that is based in connection, right? Yes, we need metrics. Yes, we need structure. Yes, we need all those things. But really, that first week is, can I connect with this person on a human to human level, honestly? So start building that rapport with them, letting them understand who you are as an organization, why they came to work with you in the first place, right? Get them excited and engaged. So that first week really needs to be focused on them, understanding who they are, taking them out to lunch, maybe having some swag for them. If you are a manager and owner of an organization and you're not typically involved in the new hires, spend a little time with them. Spend 15 minutes with them. Bring them in the office, get to know them a little bit. Ask them some questions. That will go a huge distance in keeping people engaged.
It looks like we have one more, unless again anyone else can drop their questions in. But what do you recommend when you get off track when you're in your process?
I would recommend going back to the first step, the timeline and the keep all the pieces. I would go back and just systematically, that's what we do. When we get off track, we have to go back and we have to understand our responsibility in it and some other ways to get things processed, dialed in. Do we need to open the search up to more sites? Do we need to open the location up? Do we need to change something in that job description? Do we need to change our interview process? Like, you need to look through each step and decide what you need to tighten up, because typically from my understanding, it's always going to come back to your process that you started from the beginning.
Awesome. Okay, let me check one more time. It looks like that's all the questions we have. Suman, thank you so much. And to everyone that joined us today, I will be sharing this presentation via email. And then Suman also offers complimentary one-on-ones, just about 30 minutes just to chat about your business. She can answer any questions that you have about your particular hiring challenges. So you can either email me or Suman and we can get that set up for you. And then, of course, we're available on LinkedIn and on our website if you want to connect with us there. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.